a couple of other questions that I have, maybe not necessarily around LSAT Flex, but generally about your channel, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, and how did you kind of get into the space of doing videos about LSAT for YouTube?
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of funny. It was sort of all at once thing. I felt like video was becoming big and I was kind of nervous about doing it, nervous about speaking on camera, nervous about speaking in general. And I decided to just say, you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to dive in head first. So I did a YouTube live and that was really scary, but it
Like
actually,
as your first video?
yeah,
Oh my
I
gosh.
just
Okay.
went, I'm a person of extremes. And
Okay.
so I went all in, just like, I'm doing a YouTube live tonight, no
Okay.
prep, just Q&A. And it ended up being fine. It wasn't perfect, obviously, like the angle was off, the lighting was off, weird stuff in the background. But once I did that first one, that kind of broke the ice. And then I was like, I'm doing another one next week.
Okay.
And it just kind of continued from there. And then I switched from YouTube Live to recording on Zoom like this. And since it has recording built in and it's better than Skype in a lot of ways, that became the default. And then I found scheduling software that integrates with Zoom. And so I could have meetings with people like this where they could schedule and it would give a Zoom link and recordings built in. So just once you do one conversation, you can do 10, then you can do 100, then you can do meetings, then you can do webinars. And so Zoom has really made it very easy. If not for that, I'd probably just keep doing YouTube lives. I've also done Facebook lives, but I guess my idea is like, let me record as much as possible and put it out on YouTube and elsewhere as much as possible too. So I scaled it bit by bit, first just focusing on YouTube as distribution. Then I added on Facebook and Instagram and captioning. And the whole thing's pretty complicated, but it's grown to be that, but it doesn't have to be. I think it can be as simple as just doing lives and recording those, and that can be enough.
The idea, and mind you, YouTube is largely a space, especially in terms of talking about law school experiences, a space that I'm very new to. And the idea of starting out from the very beginning with a live video is like terrifying. So kudos to you for that. And my other question is, what is your background and what is your kind of experience around LSAT and law school and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005. When I studied for it myself, took it myself, I then decided to not go to law school because I enjoyed teaching it so much. I was in the application process, but the teaching was going great and I didn't really have great reasons for wanting to go to law school or enough experience about what the legal space was like. And so
Sure.
The teaching I knew really well. Law, I actually didn't know that well. I was just a poli-sci major and had a vague sense of it. So I started my website, the LSAT blog, in 2008 and focused on that for a very long time, just that and tutoring. And then I did some in-person classes that I really enjoyed and those went well, but I didn't record them. And then once I combined video and teaching classes together, both in person and online, I think that really allowed me to scale things up. And it all just kind of snowballed bit by bit, but I would just experiment and some things work, some things didn't. The things that work, I just continue and add them on. And just one more comment about and then I ended up doing online courses and group coaching and webinars and interviews, just all different formats, but it's basically me and somebody else having a conversation, whether it's me and a student or me and an admissions officer or me and a lawyer or me and a YouTuber like yourself, a law student. So yeah, there's a variety of people you can interact with who are part of this niche and part of this space, and they all have a role to play.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really cool space. People are pretty collaborative and non-competitive, and there's no limit to what you can watch and what can go out there on YouTube, and we can only help each other grow. So I think that's really cool. One other thing I'll add on is that with the lives, it is scary to jump in feet first, but I guess the benefit of that is that once you start, you can't really stop. Like there's no editing involved, and it's very easy to like obsess over every little gaffe or every little tick or every little thing that doesn't go perfectly. And I've definitely gone to that end of things sometimes where I will rewatch the entire thing and edit out all the little ums and uhs and buts or losing the train of thought. But over time, I think what's allowed me to continue going is to just not worry too much about that and to slow down, take a moment to think a little bit, and that can kind of reduce those little errors. And there's a benefit to quantity. Obviously, quality is really important, but I feel like having something that's 95% perfect, you can do 10 of those, whereas you can only do one thing that's 100% perfect. And I think raw and real kind of wins the day in the end. I feel like the mainstream media is so overproduced and edited and refined. And I feel like the internet kind of has moved away from that. Like if you look at like the rise of TikTok,
Yeah.
there's so much creativity and so much of it is raw, or how reality TV differed from a sitcom. So I feel like I'm just kind of embracing that.
Okay, that's fair. That's really cool. And as someone who comes from, and like I said, is pretty new to the space and comes from their perspective of largely the YouTubers that I love seem to have transcended to this like very, very crazy high level of YouTube creation, and they have these very produced videos. I think it's really, a lot of folks don't know the amount of work that goes into all of the editing. And for example, like if folks put out a video once a week, that is a part-time job at bare minimum. And I think, for example, not having to go through the editing process and, putting more value and emphasis on, for example, an interaction like this, or just taking a existing video and putting it straight on the internet, as terrifying as that sounds, it allows you to also pump out more content, and it allows you to kind of get your message out in a way that is not necessarily going to slow down, and it's going to be a little more relevant in the time. So there's, I think, a lot of benefits to that. So that's pretty cool. So
thanks. No, I mean, that's what works for me. Like I'm all about the content, especially in an area as niche and specialized as the LSAT or law school admissions. But for other people, they might like the produced stuff. And I'll admit that produced stuff looks really cool. I have no clue how to do that. And that's part of why I don't do that. Like I consider my forte is like the content. So that's where I can bring the most value. But there are tons of produced videos with animations and text on them and stuff, or even like little stickers that I have no clue how to do. I think they look really cool. And I like watching them. I even like things like the cold opens. I think cold opens are really fun. And I saw you did one with your cat, and I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Like that was really funny. I had no clue that was coming, and that was really nice.
I'm actually really surprised she hasn't like jumped onto my lap during these. I have a cat and a dog, and my dog is the chillest animal in the world, and my cat is just going ham in every video that I make. So thank you.
No, sure. That's cool though. I think there's a value in that too. Like I saw people do cold opens, and I was like, I want to add that into my videos. Like choose a certain excerpt and just throw that at the beginning as like a teaser. I haven't done that a single time though, but I think it would be cool to do. But it's like, I have a backlog of things I still got to edit. So I'd rather just get those out than think too much about, it is.
Hearing the perspective of, I don't do the editing or do as much editing is actually a little refreshing. So
yeah, it's whatever works. It's also whatever gets you started. I feel like you could start doing it my style and then build up a bank of those to schedule out. And then once you have a bunch of those scheduled out, then you could actually say, you know what, I've got enough content in the pipeline. I'm going to slow down and start tweaking things a little bit more to get a more refined result, or a more tailored result with more of the effects, and experiment with that. But it does take a ton of time. Even just editing out if you choose to go that route, takes a lot of time to rewatch everything. So I typically don't do that unless I do something that's like really embarrassing that I want to cut out.
That makes sense. And then my other question, and this is something that someone raised for me on Reddit, is that there aren't a whole lot of folks in the law school, LSAT, or overall law school space that are creating content on YouTube and kind of sharing their experiences. Do you see that as something that's going to kind of ramp up over time and potentially coming along with the shift more towards online learning, or, for example, Zoom learning, going to Zoom University of Law? Where do you see that going in the next few years?
I think it will definitely increase. There's no reason it wouldn't, with everything moving online and so many people getting exposed to Zoom. Even if just you're a college student or a law school student, you're introduced to Zoom, you're like, oh, this has recording built in. People have this pent up creativity that they just need the tools to allow it to unleash. And there's plenty of smart people out there who, given the right tools, can do anything. So I definitely expect the number of people entering the space to increase, plus with the fact of more distribution of internet, more distribution of internet connected devices. To combine that with the knowledge and the creativity, I think it's definitely going to rise. And I think we see a lot of that on TikTok also. I mean, I barely even looked at TikTok, but I searched LSAT there and was amazed at all the stuff that I found and the creativity involved.
If I get on TikTok, I think I stay on for at least an hour and a half and I'm just scrolling, watching stupid things. So, I mean, if you have the self-discipline to only be on or barely be on, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but it's cool though. Like people, the amount of creativity that goes into a 1-minute video or less, it's awesome. I love seeing that.
It's a lot more complicated than it looks.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, like just, for example, like video thumbnails. That's something that I will spend probably about 2 hours on per video, just trying to get, okay, does this look clickable? Like, would you click on this? And then sometimes even when you put it out there, it doesn't necessarily get the response that you'd hope it would. And you're like, okay, but next time that thumbnail's really going to get them. So yeah, it's a lot more. There's a lot more work I think that goes into creating and, you know, generally creating videos of this type or TikTok generally than people give other folks credit for, especially when you see people that have amazing video quality and you're like, oh, you have some, like, you've got some resources behind you. Like we both have mics, right? And that's, you only learn that in, you know, creating a video and seeing, oh my gosh, my audio sounds like crap. This is why it sounds like crap. I don't have the correct, you know, equipment in place for my content to sound like it's actually professional. So yeah, little things like that make a huge difference. And I'm wondering, for those folks that make TikToks that are viral and that are absolutely amazing, do they have those same resources behind them that, for example, YouTubers use? And I'm assuming the folks that really are successful in that space do.
I would imagine that a lot of them do, yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily try to get into this to get a massive following. I think that's probably the wrong reason.
Yeah.
I would, especially for like virality on TikTok, like there's so much involved in making that happen. I'll just stick with what I know, which is YouTube. And I would say that for YouTube, you could start small. Like you don't need any special equipment other than a computer or a phone. And I would just start there. Like this isn't the first mic that I used for YouTube. I've had like 2 others before this that were cheaper and lower quality, but good enough to get started. And then at a certain point when it bothers you enough and you have enough of a following or you're invested enough that you're like, you know what, it's time to level up, then you could get the next level up the chain. But,
yeah, that makes sense. I actually started out making videos on my iPhone as well.
Oh, nice. So, yeah, nice. Yeah, I think just
somewhere.
For me, at least, what makes sense is like the content first and then scale up the equipment, the resources, the investment per video as you decide to go deeper down the rabbit hole.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole of like the content creating aspect of things, because I'm sure that's largely not what viewers on both of our channels are looking for. But just it's interesting to have the perspective of someone who has so much tenure in the YouTube space and talking about law school and LSAT. So.
No, sure. It's fun. I appreciate the questions. I love talking about this stuff. I don't talk about it that much, but I would hope that this sort of thing inspires other people to create their own videos too, because I think the more content that's out there, the more information, really the better.
Co-sign on that. I'm really interested in, for example, you were the first person that reached out to me and wanted to do a collab. I'm now in a space of wanting to do the same with other YouTubers that I see that are talking about law school, and especially people that are talking about just being a 0L or a 1L this fall, and seeing, you know, here's your experience with your school. Like, why don't we compare and contrast? And I think there's a lot more that goes into the decision-making process, as I've mentioned, and kind of hearing folks, like, how do you weigh all of those kind of whirlwind decisions that we've been faced with in the past 3 months? And like, for example, I made a video about wait lists, and I feel like having the pressure of a pandemic and also, you know, putting yourself in a space where you're really pressured about getting off of someone's wait list and you have all of those anxieties going on. I'm interested in getting in other people's headspace around, you know, why are they either justifying or not justifying certain actions around their law school decisions.
No, it's good. I think it's definitely worth having those conversations and getting that information out there, because there are a lot of people who are weighing the pros and cons of going this fall or not, and dealing with pressure from law schools and information or lack of information from law schools. And so anything that could help other people who are going through those decisions where it's a big decision to make, big investments involved. And so I think having those conversations is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for this.
Likewise, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. And feel free to reach out if you ever want to do another collab or something along the lines of that.
Definitely will do.